now that you have a flavor for how Mendel went about doing all of his different crosses, let's work through a few of our own and see if we can't solve some genetic problems together. These actually, once you get the hang of it, can be kind of fun. Now, one thing I want to talk about is we're going to be talking a lot about different traits in humans that are dominant and recessive. I just want you to know that the way we know that they're dominant and recessive, not because we went out and crossbred humans. Okay, you can't do that. It's not ethically right to say, okay, you over here, you're tall, I want you to mate with this short person and create 20 offspring and let's see how many talls and shorts we get. This is not possible in humans. So we have to use a little different approach to determining tall versus short alleles in humans. And the way we do that is through the development of pedigrees or family trees. In pedigrees that are used in tracking genetic traits, a circle always represents a female, a square always represents a male, and when a circle or a square is shaded in like you see here, that means the individual has the genotype that or the phenotype that we're tracking, like say blue eyes, or maybe they have a particular disease or whatever it might be. Now, when we are talking about diseases in particular, you will sometimes hear the term carrier mentioned. A carrier is a heterozygote, but this term is only used when we refer to diseases. Okay, I can't look at somebody and know that they're a carrier. I can't just look at a person in classroom and say, oh, you have the recessive allele for this disease. I can see it on your face. Okay, I don't know that. The term carrier is a term we apply when we know what somebody's genetic makeup is, and if we know they are carrying a copy of a recessive allele that codes for the development of a particular disease, we call them a carrier. Again, only relates to diseases. Now, some students have issues with solving genetics problems and they get all turned upside down, and over teaching the solving of genetics problems for about a decade now, I've come to realize that probably the best way for everybody to learn how to solve genetic problems, at least initially, is to follow some five discrete steps. And if you can follow these 5 steps when you're first learning how to solve genetics problems, it will help you get down and understand the process so that you'll be better able to solve more complex problems as they're thrown at you. So we're going to go through these 5 steps and look at them and solve a couple problems practicing using these 5 steps. So the first step of solving a genetic problem, we're going to code for the alleles, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. Then we're going to determine what the parental genotypes are. We're going to figure out what kind of gametes they can make. That's step 3. We're going to draw ourselves a Punnett square to determine what kind of offspring can result, and then we're going to go back and reread the problem and answer the question based on the information we generated in steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So here's our first question. If you can roll your tongue, it means you have at least one copy of the dominant allele for tongue rolling. So let's imagine that we have a woman who is heterozygous for tongue rolling. She marries a man who cannot roll his tongue, and we want to know what the chances are that they'll have a child that also will not be able to roll its tongue. So we're going to use the 5 steps of solving a genetics problem to do this. The first step is code for the alleles. That means clearly show you and me both what big R represents, what little r represents. So here's our original problem again. So I'm going to use capital R, just like it told me to here in the problem, to represent being able to roll the tongue. I'm going to use small r to represent no tongue roll. That's all I had to do for step 1. Pretty easy. But I got to make sure I have that up front so I know what the dominant and what the recessive alleles are. Now, step 2, I'm going to figure out what the parental genotypes or whatever genotypes I've been given in the problem are. This says I have a heterozygous woman. If she's heterozygous for tongue rolling, that means she has one copy of the dominant allele. She has one copy of the recessive allele. That's the woman. She marries a man, it says here, who cannot roll his tongue. If he cannot roll his tongue, that means he does not have the dominant allele at all, so he must be homozygous recessive. Okay, that was step 2, pretty easy. Now, step 3, we got to figure out what kind of gametes each of these parents can make. And we said the female, again, was a heterozygote. The male again was a homozygote recessive. This is a diploid genotype. This is a diploid genotype. To make gametes, each gamete has to be haploid. So this woman can either make an egg with a capital R, or she can make an egg with a lowercase r. He can make sperm that only have little r's. There's no other options for them. They're all going to be little r sperm. There, we're done. We've determined the parental genotypes. We're on to step 4, where we're going to draw a Punnett square. And let's put her genotypes for her gametes across the top. We'll put his genotypes for his gametes along the side. If it helps you think of it better to think of an egg and sperm cell there like I've drawn them, great, draw it for you, but you don't have to do that. Then I'm just going to fill in my Punnett square and see what I get. Now, step 5. Step 5 is I got to go back and carefully reread the problem and answer the question based on the information that I've generated in steps 1 through 4. Okay, so it asks, what are the chances a child of theirs won't be able to roll its tongue? So let's go back here and look. If I have a copy of the big R, that means I can roll my tongue. So this individual can tongue roll, this individual can tongue roll. But these two over here cannot roll their tongues. So there's basically a 1-to-1 ratio. There's a 50% chance that they will not be able to roll their tongue. All right, I've taken you through one example. I'm going to ask that you now read through this problem, hit pause after you've had a chance to work through the 5 steps and write out each of the 5 steps and review what each of the 5 steps are. I will then take you through step by step to see if you got the right answer. Make sure you really do this. The only way to learn is to experience it for yourself. So hit pause now and work through this problem, and then hit play when you're done and see if you're right. Okay, so let's take a look at the solution. Hopefully you've worked through the problem, you've written down all 5 steps, you understand how to do it, and you're ready to check your answer against my answer to see if you're correct. So the question was, if a homozygous tongue roller and a non-tongue roller get married, what are the chances that they'll have a child that can roll its tongue? Step 1 of solving a genetics problem is always to code for the alleles. So I'm going to use big R for rolling the tongue. I'm going to use little r for no roll of the tongue. Step 2, I'm going to determine the parental genotypes, or whatever genotypes I've been given. This says a homozygous tongue roller. If I can roll my tongue and I'm homozygous, I have to have 2 copies of the dominant allele. Is married to a non-tongue roller. If I cannot roll my tongue, that means I cannot have any copies of the dominant allele present in my genotype, so I'm little r, little r. Part 3, step 3, I have to determine the types of gametes each of the parents can make. This individual can make gametes that have a big R or have a big R, no other possibilities. This individual can make little r or little r gametes, no other possibilities. Step 4, I'm going to draw my Punnett square, put one parent's gametes along one side, one parent's gametes along the other, fill in the Punnett square. And then step 5, I'm going to go back, carefully reread the problem, and answer the question that was asked. The question was, what are the chances their child will be able to roll its tongue? Well, if I look here, tongue rolling occurs if there's one copy of the dominant allele present. This individual can roll their tongue, so can this one, so can this one, so can this one. The answer is 100% chance that the child will be able to roll its tongue. So did you do it right? If you didn't, go back and see where you messed up so you know. We're going to now go ahead and practice with lots of genetic problems in class, and it's going to be really critical that you know those 5 steps to solving the problem, because on the exam I will ask you to solve genetics problems using the 5 steps, and I do that so that if you mess up somewhere along the line, if you've clearly labeled all 5 steps of the genetics problem, I'll be able to at least give you partial credit. If, for example, you did steps 1, 2, and 3 correctly, well, you're going to get 3 points out of 5 on the problem instead of just getting a 0 for not having the correct answer. So make sure you learn those 5 steps and are comfortable using those 5 steps. Next up, we're going to talk about some different genetic disorders.